Thanks everyone for being here. Quick shout out to General Assembly for hosting us. We really appreciate everything you do. Also shout out for the beer and pizza, it's always nice. So I'm joined here today with 3 data scientists from 3 very different companies, as well as Matt over here, who's a VP and head of data science and data engineering recruiting at a recruiting firm called Averity. So yeah, without further ado, you're not here to listen to me talk, we're here to listen to these folks and their stories. So my name is Pat Macy Phelps. I'm a data scientist at Data IQ. I think it's best to start out if you could just introduce yourself, the company that you work for, and what brought you here today. What brought you to data science? Emily, could you start?
Is this on?
Yeah.
It's on, okay. All right. Hi, I'm Emily, and I'm a data scientist at a company, a tech startup called Urbant. Basically, what we do is we leverage machine learning and artificial intelligence to produce software as a service, so SaaS solutions, for companies in the utility sector. So what I am doing specifically involves like detecting corrosion in gas pipes underground, that sort of thing. We have a number of solutions, but that's what I'm working on and what brought me to data science. Was actually a long daisy chain of interest in science generally. I had a research background in glaciology and then ended up at NYU Cusp, which is a master's program, got a degree in urban informatics, which meshed very well with Urban's mission, so that's how I got there.
Hi, I'm Pavitra. I work as part of the real world reinforcement learning group at Microsoft Research. I was a software engineer before. I worked on database products, and prior to Microsoft, I've also worked on problems in computational advertising. What brought me to data science? I actually didn't specifically go looking for data science. I just found, I took a course and I found like auction theory super interesting, so I chased problems in auction theory and I ended up in data science.
Hey everyone, my name is EJ and I'm a data scientist and full stack developer at Accenture during daytime, and at night and weekends I work on my startup called Caris, which is a fashion retail startup. So I originally started as a software engineer, like when I was in college, like everyone wants to be a software engineer or a computer science major. And I just happened to stumble across a company which was a data intelligence company in a hackathon. And I started working for them as a software engineer, and most of the platforms I was building revolved around data. So I gradually just found myself doing some data engineering and eventually transitioned as a data scientist. So my day-to-day responsibilities mostly change every 2 months because I'm a tech consultant. So I work with teams within Fortune 500 companies that are trying to inject data science into their practices. So it's mostly rapid prototyping works for like 2 to 3 months, and then move off to the next project. Yeah.
My name is Matt, and I work at a company called Averity. We are a technical recruiting firm headquartered here in New York. We have 3 teams. We do software engineering, we do DevOps and infrastructure, and I head up the data science and data engineering team. The rest of my team is back there as well. We focus again on these 2 areas, data science and data engineering. What brought us to that? The company itself started with just software engineering, and I started up the data science practice about 4 years ago. Why was that? I think this room is a testament to why. I think this type of event would have attracted a 10 of as many people at that time period, and you've seen how much it has grown. So we really like to be a part of what's new, what's exciting, what people are hiring for, and what people are interested in.
Great, thanks everyone. So Emily, you come from academia. It sounds like you did a lot of research related to AI and machine learning. I know you wrote a paper which tried to estimate like water levels on glaciers. And so I think in the room here, we probably have a lot of people coming from academia right now. Can I get a show of hands, like who's a student right now? Okay, so a fair amount of people. So what was it like to transition from being a student to being at your current job, and what were the skills that you learned in college which helped you get a career in data science?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think very tailored to me because I'm pretty new to data science in general. I've been working full-time for about a year as a data scientist, so pretty much a greenhorn here. I have a pretty heavy student background, so I think that actually going through and doing research, doing a lot of technical research, working in a small team environment, it encourages a lot of communication with other people, both technical and non-technical, and you end up having to do something that's really, really important for both data science and for research generally. So that thing is problem formulation. In research, what you're doing is original. It's not something that's been done before. You have to actually think, okay, this is something I'm interested in, this is a problem that I see, but how am I actually going to solve that problem? Well, this is the kind of data that I have, this is the kind of information I have access to, these are the kinds of people I can access and ask for help and collaborate with. How can I actually leverage all of this to make a solution that has an impact either in the research community or tangibly like in the actual real community? And that, I think, for me, was probably the most valuable thing I learned. So, of course, there are technical skills that you learn in college. Like I have my bachelor's is in geophysics, so I have a fair amount of quantitative background, and I took a course in machine learning in undergrad because I was just interested in it. But being interested in everything and wanting to ask the right questions, not necessarily arrive at the quote-unquote correct answer, I think is one of the best things I got out of that.
So, for the rest of you guys who maybe didn't necessarily learn machine learning or statistics in college, I know that you two did software engineering at first and then transitioned into data science that way. How did you start to build up the skills for machine learning, statistics, that kind of stuff?
So personally, so this is my learning approach is I start top to bottom. Because initially I started learning concepts of math, and then as a beginner you want to directly jump into machine learning, right? You want to build something, maybe image recognition model. And then you go to this tutorial and it starts with 3 months of just math. And it's like, when am I going to build that? So I started with something that's already built, and I kind of just set things up and I want something that someone else built. And maybe just tweak 1 or 2 things here and there. And that kind of gives me a confidence of, hey, it's someone else built it, but still there's some kind of satisfaction running that and maybe just using your own image set and doing some prediction. And then you dive into each line to see what that code is doing at a super high level and just understanding that concept at a super high level. And then I think you get a little more motivation to understand what is going on under the hood. And that's normally how I learn. And I think there's still a lot to learn, but that's generally the approach that I take.
And so, was this learning to found your startup and do things for that venture, or is this just kind of side learning that you did through Coursera or other means?
So I think my learning started with managing teams slightly because I kind of led a set of small teams, like 4 or 5 people team, which was a combination of software engineers, data engineers. And for me to tell them what to do without really understanding what they're going through was very difficult. And I wanted to understand what they were going through. And so I kind of did a little bit in every area, and then I found data science interesting. I don't do it super hardcore, 5 days of my week I'm doing software engineering 2 days and doing data science. So I'm kind of going back and forth, but that was the motivation behind it.
Yeah. So I actually have a background in statistics because I have a graduate degree in operations research. So I explored I took a bunch of math courses, so my approach to learning is a little bit different. So when I went to grad school, I did actually pick machine learning courses because they were popular, because there are a lot of resources online to learn machine learning nowadays. So I went to school to pick courses that weren't available online, like a course in operations research in public policy, and that's where I got exposure to research problems and advertising and auction theory and a lot of different things. So I don't do I do kind of top down, but I also kind of do bottom up. So I first pick up something that I'm interested to learn. I do the breadth first, no matter how hard it is, what parts I don't understand, I get to the end of it, so then I familiarize myself with all the terminologies. Then I go in depth, and that's how I feel confident to solving problems. So I usually pick up a book, read it till the end, then do chapter by chapter. So.
Intense way of learning, but interesting. So one thing that I've been thinking about a lot recently is if you're looking to break into the data science space, is it enough to just learn skills on your own through Coursera, or do you need some sort of signal? So if you're going through a boot camp, going through a data science master's program. So my next question is for Matt. I think, what have you seen in the market in terms of like hard requirements that companies are looking for in the data science space?
Sure. I think when you look at that, there's a couple different answers. You can say, well, what's the easiest path to getting a job as a data scientist versus maybe a little harder, and what's going to take you a little longer. So obviously, there's a really quick answer to say, well, if sort of skill set is pretty easy, like graduate at the top of your class, go to an Ivy League school, get a PhD from Stanford, and you'll get hired at JP Morgan or something. I think that's pretty straightforward. That's probably not the most applicable background for everybody in this room, right? So what does that mean? I think nowadays there's a lot more variety in what companies define as a data scientist and what kind of skills and backgrounds you're going to look for. Sure, there's some common denominators there. If you're going down that path of being a very technical data scientist, there's certain skill sets that people are going to be looking for, that technical background, STEM degree, Python, for example, experience with certain machine learning libraries. Now, that being said, do you have to learn all of that from a particular university or master's or PhD? Not necessarily. I think there are plenty of jobs out there, people that get jobs through indirect means. And something that I think our group can talk about it is that, yeah, maybe a few years ago there was a lot more rigid definitions of what a data scientist is and what their background is going to look like. But with the proliferation of all the different boot camps, online courses, remote university classes, etc., there's a lot more opportunity for people to break in with a skill set. And I think that's also an indication of how big this area has grown, because look, if you're going to limit your pool of workers, the talent in data science to just that small subset, you're never going to fill all these jobs. So I think, it's easy to say again, like get that higher degree or whatnot, but I think there's a great opportunity right now for people to just get their hands dirty, learn the skills, whatever means possible, if it's in your free time, whether it's through remote coursework, whether it's through a boot camp. I think there's some great opportunities there. And look, at the end of the day, and I can attest to this, I went to law school, no one cares about that, about, the day I walked out of there, like at the end of the day, people are gonna be looking at your skill sets. If you're talented, if you communicate well, if you're smart, if you can do the work, that's what companies ultimately are gonna be looking for.
Great. So EJ, you work at Accenture right now. How big are some of the soft skills like communication in a consulting firm?
So in consulting, yeah, definitely seen a huge need to be able to extract information. This is how I like to put it. Because you go into a project, and especially the projects I've been in, or like rapid prototyping projects, the companies don't really know how data science can help them in the first place. They have a vague idea. Like, I'll give you an example. This was before Accenture, the company that got acquired by Accenture, which I used to work for Chronology. So we went to this company down in Florida, and it was a company that probably made millions or close to $1 billion in profit, but they had never done any kind of machine learning. And they kind of knew that, hey, this new thing is out there and it's probably going to help us. And their sales was like pretty manual, and they wanted to generate some real insights from that. But other than that, they really knew nothing more. So we went in, and the first task was just understanding the business, understanding how the steel industry worked. And we had like 2 months, and 1 week was just intense understanding how their business worked, how their competitors worked. And the thing is, they can't really explain it to you without you asking the right questions. So the very important task is you need to know what the right questions are, and almost like create a roadmap saying, hey, this is how I think you should go. Maybe the first thing should be you do something called customer segmentation. So you segment the customers that you want to look at in the first place. And then gradually go to something called like your shippings. We route your shippings based on what is the best route, but that's not the first thing to get you. So you kind of take that path and recommend the path that you should be taking. And that's probably the most important thing compared to other technical backgrounds. Like in software engineering, you can sit in a room, someone's going to bring you the requirements and you just code 8 hours a day, you're good. If you're in data science, and especially if you're a consultant going and helping businesses, 40%, 30 to 40% of your job is just like understanding the business and helping that business.
Papa, you were shaking your head a lot at what EJ was saying. So how do you, approach problems at Microsoft? How do you identify problems that can be solved by machine learning? And then how do you go about tackling them?
So you have to know what kind of questions to ask the researcher, and then you have to talk to the business team to understand like if their problem fits, the specifications for this algorithm. So I agree with EJ a lot. Sometimes you don't even know what the right questions are to ask, and I think, and nobody likes a smart ass in the room. Like even though you may have like read a bunch of papers, and you may perceive that you know a lot more than the other person. I think getting down to their level and understanding where they're at, and being able to explain complicated terms, at the level where they understand, I think is a super important skill to have.
So I think, between you three guys, oftentimes data scientists have to explain, gradient boosted trees to someone, a business stakeholder who doesn't know what that is. And so, what kinds of steps do you take to bridge that gap? Maybe Emily. I know that you have a lot of data scientists on your team, so you're very tech focused. So.
We are tech focused, but at the same time, how we work at Urbent is we have our team of data scientists doing our technical, predictive analytic magic, so to speak. But we work very, very closely with dev, we work very, very closely with product, and then we also have a team of deployment strategists who are sort of act as our translators between data science and the client. So I produce insights, I produce predictions, and these predictions I kind of meet one-on-one with the deployment strategist working on this project with me, and we come up with a way together to make sure that we are saying everything that needs to be said clearly, succinctly, and precisely, but in a way that is not intimidating to someone who doesn't have any kind of technical background. It's really important to make sure that you don't just because you say something and you think it to be true and it makes perfect sense to you, to have some humility and put yourself in the shoes of other people who don't have your experience, don't have your expertise. You don't want to walk into a client meeting and then just give a very technical presentation about how your model is the best thing ever and you should totally buy it because, metrics. They don't know what those are, they don't know what they mean. You need to frame everything in a way that appeals to the way a client thinks about how your solution is going to provide value for them, how it's going to be actionable for them.
I think I was meeting with one of our clients who's an insurance company the other day, and they said that the number one problem they see in their data science team is that the models that they train, they have high AUC, high metrics, but none of the business stakeholders actually use the models. So it's this last step of translating your model into business proposition, I think is super important. Let's see. What question do I want to ask next?
Well, I'll tackle that to add on to that is that, one thing that we look for, and kind of a mantra we have at Averity is the founder came up with was people hire people, right? And it's kind of like, okay, what does that mean? It's, that doesn't mean anything, but it's true. They don't hire a piece of paper. They don't hire words on a sheet. They hire people. So if you're a data scientist, it doesn't matter if you're the smartest person in the world, if you're not able to communicate that, if you're not able to connect with people, those soft skills still are very important. And it's not so much that it's about you just being somebody that the company wants to work around or if you're around that person a lot, but I don't think there's many data scientists, and you guys can attest to this, I don't think there's many data scientists that work so much in a bubble. And if you do, it's probably extremely rare. You're probably spending a lot of time, communicating what you actually do to internal or external stakeholders. And to be honest about it, probably a lot of your time is justifying why they should even have you on the payroll, or a lot of companies are probably dealing with that and saying, no, look, we're actually bringing value to the company. Look at what we've done. And if you can't explain that to somebody in plain language, you're in trouble. So I think, again, when you're hiring or looking, that's going to be a big component of what you are as a data scientist.
And so, does anyone have thoughts on like some ways that they acquired soft skills before transitioning into data science? Any like relevant past work or academic experience that really helped you out on that front? Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a very clear memory of moments in my academic past where I suddenly just became okay with talking in front of people. And that was, that was when I was doing that glaciological research I mentioned earlier. Basically, it was being presented at the American Geophysical Union's fall meeting in 2016, and I was just going to be presenting a poster. So I was going to be standing there for a couple hours, talking to anyone who happened to drive by and was going to be interested in learning about my research, and I was going to talk about that, and that was fine. One person who saw that was quite interested. He was also in charge of organizing a series of talks the next day, and he comes up to me and says, "Your research is pretty cool, but we have someone who was supposed to be presenting tomorrow who canceled, and they're first, and would you like to go? You have 24 hours to prepare a presentation to give to all of these professional scientists." And I'm just like, I can't say no to this, but I was completely terrified. And I think that I went ahead and did it. It was the most terrifying experience of my life, but I'm so grateful that I did it. And I think being opportunistic about ways to improve either your public speaking or just the way you communicate with other people and getting to other people's perspectives is just something you have to do. You have to kind of rip that proverbial Band-Aid off if you're not comfortable with it, and over time you will become comfortable with it.
Yeah, and believe me, even executives rehearse their presentations. They have footnotes. So always rehearse your presentations, rehearse your thoughts. And one of the tips that one of the executives told me that has worked very well for me is always memorize the first 2 lines of your talk. Then you go in smoothly, and that gives you kind of confidence, and then things come naturally to you. And then in order to improve, there are a bunch of different ways. One of the things I did early in my data science was like trying to grab hold of my sister and try to like run her on my presentation. She's a software engineer, didn't have background in statistics. So if she understood, then I think I'm kind of confident that other people would understand. And then just general public speaking, there are Toastmasters and other organizations.
What I initially used to do was, when I first started doing client presentations, I was kind of thrown off to it because my manager ended up leaving, so I had to like take care of the project. And I was not used to doing non-technical presentation to people who didn't have programming background, so I actually used to practice, yeah, like you said. And the goal of my practice was I should not be spitting technical words. Like if I'm spitting, 2 technical, 3 technical things, if I'm talking about functions or like something I did in pandas, like that's not the best way to go. And it took some practice to be able to explain things without using technical terms. And the simplest thing is just using like plain examples. If you're explaining them a concept, don't talk about machine learning or data science concepts. Break it down like a real world problem. Like talk about like if you're in a street and something happened and this and this. That's probably the best way that I've like found to, if you want to explain some like complicated concept. Also, there's a saying like if you can't explain something to someone in plain English, like they're 5-year-old, chances are you probably haven't understood that thing in the first place. So
Agree with that. So one, as I'm sure all of you know in the room here, data science is a very hot space. Everyone calls it like the hottest job of 2018, 19, whatever. What do you guys think about the hype? Do you think it is just that? Do you think we're all here smelling our own farts and I mean, what do you think? Is it really all that it's hyped out to be?
Yeah, so there are a few things. There's definitely a lot of hype around the space. And if anyone is joining, like a few of the misconceptions I kind of want to get it out of the way. Data science is not equal to machine learning. Machine learning is a part of data science, but it's not. I think a lot of people I talk to, like they want to join, are like, day one, am I going to be doing machine learning? Like, is that all I'm going to be doing? No, chances are a lot of times you can't even do machine learning because, at least in its current state, machine learning models do not explain how they got to a conclusion. Like you feed it data and then it spits out an output. And sometimes as a data scientist, you have to help businesses make decisions. And if you're telling them, hey, you have to sell these 2 factories, you can't say, I fed it into this model, and this model told me we have to sell the factory. You have to go through an analytical process and actually be able to explain how you came to that conclusion. So that machine learning hype is something like I want to put it on the side. We'll be working on it depending on your project, but it's not like 100% of data science.
So what's like the percentage of your projects which include machine learning, would you say?
Again, it depends. Sometimes you can't use it if you're helping businesses make decisions. It's probably like it's even out of the equation. But even if you're using it, chances are, unless you're in like a research thing like she is, you'll be able to use models that are already out there, out-of-the-box algorithms. And your bulk of your job, like 70% or even more than that, could be just getting that data in a state that you can feed it into that model. That's the bulk of the work. So once you get to that point, you'll be pulling out one of the out-of-the-box machine learning models, feeding things into it, and then of course you'll be optimizing that so it like works well. But I would say like 20–30%, that's high. And again, it could be different because I'm a consulting project. I'm always in a crunch time. Like I got 2 months to deliver something. So it could be different if you're on a project for like 2 years and you guys are taking time.
So Pop, a question for you. So I know that you came from software engineering. You're a senior data scientist at Microsoft now. Is there anything different about the actual job of being a data scientist with the research group as opposed to what you expected coming in?
Yeah, so I transitioned from software engineering. To be honest, I don't even remember most of what I was doing back then. It was in the technologies I used. Like in one of my interviews, somebody asked me to explain the product, and I was at a loss because I don't remember when was the last time I did it in my resume. But being a data scientist is a lot different than being a software engineer. When you're a software engineer, you don't actually have exposure to the business side, or very little unless you're at a startup. When you're a data scientist, you're kind of bridging the gap between the business side, who are basically trying to translate your results to a dollar value, and then you're also trying to like negotiate with the data science team and the research team to not like go above the clouds and come up with a model that cannot be implemented in production. So there's always this like push and pull, and I think I agree with many of the things that EJ said, because it's not always about it's not like you're gonna learn machine learning every day. You're gonna throw out an F score and tomorrow you're solving a different problem. Like it doesn't work that way. So a lot of it is negotiating. A lot of it is like data cleaning. A lot of it is trying to simplify the problem, seeing what assumptions work, what assumptions don't work. Your actual algorithmic component, depending on whatever problem you're working on, is like a couple of aha moments. But in the research group, there's a lot of learning for me. I feel like I'm learning, when I joined, I had no idea how broad reinforcement learning was. And I feel like as a software engineer, my learning component day to day was minimal. But as a data scientist, I invest a lot of time in learning new things.
I think a lot of us are excited about the stuff coming out of Microsoft these days. Is there anything interesting related to reinforcement learning that you can share with us that you guys have been working on? It's okay if you can't share.
I'm part of the real world reinforcement learning group, so we try to bring reinforcement learning to real world projects. We released a product called Personalizer, which you can use for any scenario that works with personalization. And the product also won the ACM CGAG award for translating research to product, so that's pretty cool.
I guess my last question for you guys before we kind of wrap this thing up is there any advice that you'd give to someone who's trying to get a job as a data scientist? Maybe we'll start out with Emily. Or EJ if you would answer.
I'll step in. Sure.
Yeah.
I think I would have looked data science, software engineer, DevOps, whatever. I think at the end of the day, a lot of the similar qualities come out in terms of transitioning into a new job or getting a job in the first place. Again, like you're not a piece of paper, you're not a resume, you're not a LinkedIn profile. I think at the end of the day, getting out there, doing things like this, connecting with people, this is a great group of people that you want to be following on LinkedIn, connecting with them, communicating with them. Putting yourself out there, especially in the data science world, it's still a pretty small community in New York. So if you're trying to get into it, you can reach the right people and create those personal relationships with them. It's applicable to any job that you're looking for, but I think with data science, it's maybe a little bit easier because I think it's a little bit more niche still, and you can connect with these folks. I think that's number one. I think the other part too is, I think we see it all the time. You don't have to be specific to the one. If you're interviewing for a job and it's not exactly what you're looking for, just get in there, get your feet dirty. I mean, there's probably a lot of roles out there, and we're hearing more and more where machine learning or data science or analytics are a part of what you're doing there. So building up those skill sets, if you're something else, if you're an analyst or a software engineer or whatever background you have, and try to get involved in that, because chances are your company is starting to do machine learning or data science. So if you can get in there and start working on some of those projects, my guess is they're probably not going to not allow you to do that, because you're probably saving them a lot more money than having to hire a data scientist. So get in there and get whatever experience you can. And in this market, a little bit of experience, no matter where you are, is going to take you wonders when you start looking for a full-time job dedicated solely to data science.
I got two things now, okay? The first thing is, I think you want to decide whether you want to focus on the breadth of the topics or, just the depth. So if you are like super into, let's just say, reinforcement learning, that's all I want to do, then something like a research route, like working for a company that is building some products around that topic, that's where you'll get to learn the most. I personally am more like a breadth-focused guy, like I like to go into different topics. And for that, consulting, like rapid prototyping projects have been great for me because every 2 months I'm on a project that's like entirely different and I'm doing something new. But the trade-off is that I don't get to spend too much time in a single topic to go into the depth, but like that's perfectly fine with me. So that's I think one of the things you want to decide. Second thing is when you're applying for jobs, this is from my experience, I think you want to understand what the role of a data scientist means within a company. Because a lot of companies still don't know what data scientists can do for them. They bring you in, and this is one of the complaints I've heard a lot. They make you do a lot of data engineering work, which is still great, because I've done that as well. But as a data scientist, you're expecting I'm going to draw some analytics work or do some machine learning. And you go in and you're given the credentials to the SQL database or Hadoop cluster. I can't build a pipeline. So it's like 2 months before you can even bring that data and do some analytical work. Which is fine. Some people like to go that entire like 360 or like 180 whatever degree process, but like figure out what data scientist means in a company before you join. That's what I want to tell.
Two things. If you want to transition into data science, we're just talking, using the word data in a very generic way. Think about what data you want to work with. Insights from the data. If you decide to work in bioinformatics, like you should think about whether you're okay thinking about just cancer data, like 8 hours a day. Sometimes it can be very emotionally draining. And if you're passionate about advertising or if you're passionate about finance, that's the first thing. The second thing is, in terms of tools, I would highly recommend investing time to learn big data technologies. I know they're changing every day because when I went to school, like Hadoop was maybe a conversation in one of the meeting rooms, right? But it's good to keep track of technologies, like attend meetups, and it's not hard to learn. Like education is getting democratized.
Okay, I have a few points as well. One of them is just if you're out there applying to jobs, realize that not only are you providing a summary of your skills, you're showing them, hey, I can code, here's my coding challenge, now here's my behavioral, all this stuff. You might be a perfectly solid data science candidate, and then it just comes down to a matter of fit. Data science is an extremely, extremely broad field, and there are a lot of companies that don't exactly know either what their version of data science is or what kind of data science solutions they want. And so in a lot of cases, things are kind of a numbers game. People get a lot of applications for one position in a week, and then within that first week applications close, but you're still applying to stuff, and then from there you have to actually have a fit with the company that you're working with. That's not as important for like entry level, but it can still be important, especially, for example, a startup environment where resources can be kind of like strapped pretty thin. In that sort of situation, you want to make sure that you are aware of what kind of data science needs are on the mind of the companies to which you're applying. That's one thing. But the second thing is also to just keep abreast of what is developing in the community, the data science field in general. Not necessarily that you have to read like every research paper that's being posted on archive or whatever, but I mean more like if people are really interested in NLP, there might be more demand for NLP-based stuff. At another point in time, there might be people being very interested in time series, that sort of thing. Just be aware of what demand is, because it is a super broad field, lots of hot spots, cold spots, changing all the time, depending on where saturation is, where interest is. And so just, keep on your toes, keep aware of what everyone else is looking to hire.
Thank you, guys. I think if I have to offer one piece of advice, it's to echo Pavithra's earlier comment on learning big data technologies. I think if you can spin up a free AWS EC2 instance and just figure out how to work through that through the command line and use Spark and stuff, I think that'd be a really good addition to a typical like Python R skill set. Okay, so we've about hit the end of the time for this panel session. We're going to break for about 10-15 minutes, and then we're going to split up into small groups. So each of us are going to lead a small group through just a conversation about data science and how you can transition to it. So feel free to have at the last of the beer if there's any left. We'll regroup in like 10-15.